Welcome to the Cash Flow Project Podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Project Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fieros with Tri-City Equity Group. Today we have Dirk Van der Velde on the show. Dirk's a real estate investor who focuses on ground-up construction, currently has over 110 units under construction, 84 units. These are basically entry-level single-family homes, which you and I both know, huge demand, huge need for that type of product out in the marketplace today. He's got a background working in development, working on that side through family businesses. Whatnot. And then he decided to branch out on his own a couple of years ago now. So it's brought him to where he's at today, jumping in, taking action, networking with people, and, looking to grow bigger and better. Dirk, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. Really appreciate it. Great to be here and excited to get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, glad to have you on. So those of our listeners who may not be familiar with you or never met you, tell our audience a little bit about yourself. How did you get started in your journey in real estate investing? Tell us a bit about your background and your history. How'd you get going?
Yeah. So my name is Dirk Van der Velde. We started our own company about 2 years ago, but before that, a lot of my family's been in the real estate development side. So really blessed, not a self-made story, really guided into a lot of experience and watched them all do their thing over time, both direct family, aunts, uncles. And so it's really blessed in that. And then about 2 years ago, really when I had my first son, it was a huge perspective change for me, right? It was, hey, now I have a family to take care of. And there was really one pivotal moment. It was actually when my son was born. At that time, I was still working for somebody, doing what I'm doing today, running his company, but I was working for somebody. And a couple of days after my son was born, I got a message from his COO saying, hey, please just make sure to put your PTO in. Right. And no, I have no problem with that. I'll go put my PTO in. But that was the fuel that I needed. It really, something about that didn't sit right to me. Right. I had to choose between vacation time and being there with my first son being born. So that fueled my fire. And that same week, I wrote our business plan, said, hey, we can go do this. I've been doing this for another guy running his company. I said, hey, we can go do this ourselves. And so that was really the kickstart. That's really what got the idea going. And from there, it took me about 10 months to pull the trigger. Finally pulled the trigger, and here we are today.
No, that's awesome, man. I mean, and sometimes we do need that little push, or we need that challenge. A lot of times people I know want to run away from, challenges and obstacles in life. For one, they're unavoidable. Yeah. For two, they can be that catalyst, just like how you said, right? They can be the fuel that we need to kind of push us and get us going in the direction that can really open up all kinds of opportunities. And it sounds like you've jumped in, pretty much, I don't want to say right off the bat, but yeah, pretty much into the deep end of the pool. Your first deal, or this larger deal I know you're working on, you mentioned it's a syndication, right? How did that even come about? In terms of you being comfortable with that, most people are like, well, okay, I'll do a one ground up, I'll do a new project. Okay, cool. But doing a syndication, raising money, all of that, that's kind of a whole nother animal. Tell us a little bit about your experience there on that end.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll say two things. I'll back up. When we first started, what got me the capital to get the party started was selling my primary house. So we got really lucky there. We bought the primary. People were saying, hey, you're already at the top of the market. Don't buy. I was like, I got a boy coming. I can't, at that time we were living in a hippie house with 4 other people. I was like, I got to buy something. So we buy that primary house. We scrape just enough to get the down payment. We buy that. And 10 months later, COVID hits, right? Nobody knows what's happening. And you remember, a couple months after COVID, let's say summer of 2020, boom, everything just skyrockets. 10 months later, we decide to sell our primary. We see where the market's at. And that's what gave us the capital. We pushed that capital into 3 lots because I had the experience to be able to do the ground up. Again, really good timing, built those 3 lots, double, triple, quadrupled our money on those. And at the same time was looking for a big deal. I've got a I've always, my dad's really showed me this, always to dream big. And so I just started putting it out there. The big deal we put together, it was an off-market deal. Again, real estate's a relationship game. So what happened was I just started putting it out there saying, hey, I just started my own thing. I'm looking for a piece of property. Let me know if you got something. And, lo and behold, the way the universe works, somebody brought a deal to me. It was a 3.5 acre piece of land. I knew the area well and was able to put a deal together for 84 units. So
that's awesome. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, there's a few different things there too. We'll unpack a little bit. I mean, for one, you had to have, the foresight to be able to identify an opportunity, right? And also like the change in the market, right? There's a lot of people that were, and even now, right? Like there's a lot of people that are just kind of running for the hills, like not doing anything. And I know it was definitely that way for, especially when COVID first hit. I mean, really nobody had prior experience. I mean, I've been through a couple of market cycles at this point, so I know at least, okay, hey, look, this is just the way that the market works. We're going to experience down cycles. We're going to experience up cycles. Like that's nothing new. But going through, COVID and all that kind of stuff. I mean, nobody knew what was going to happen. Right. So kudos to you, man, to identify like, all right, well, nope, we're going to buy a place. Nope. We're going to, still track the market. Going to still try to make moves, identify opportunities. So that, that's great. And then too, like, again, you've got to have that knowledge. You got to be putting out the feelers. You had to talk to somebody in order to make, that lot deal happen. Right.
Yeah.
It's not just, okay, well, I want good stuff to happen and sit there with your, sitting on your hands. Right. It's like, no, you got to go out and take some action. You got to go out and make some contacts. Hey, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this. This is my skill set. This is how I can apply it. Who's got a deal? Right. Yeah. And then you can start sifting and underwriting. So that's awesome, man. Great job.
Appreciate it.
So how's that project going, by the way? Is it, have you had any challenges like, with materials or, I mean, I'm sure like maybe you've run into that the last couple, I know we have on like different projects, labor, materials, all that kind of stuff, just dealing with kind of these costs that have been crazy. Has that impacted your project, or how has that impacted your project?
Yeah, I mean, that's just the reality, right? Like the reality of where we're at today, the supply chain issues, they've been really, really challenging. The good part is, I'm in the industry. We were preparing for it during due diligence. We knew it was coming. We were able to be extremely conservative with all of our pro formas and our numbers. And, what was actually, again, a lot of it's got to be luck, because when we were doing all of our due diligence, we tied the land up, and then we had a 6-month due diligence period. Because I was already doing the multifamily stuff, I know the numbers, right? So I know what's involved. I'm in it day to day. I literally have a general contracting business that's doing it. So that's one differentiator that we have. But we were able to, during that due diligence period, really plan and make sure that we penciled in the delays that may come, the cost of materials that may increase, and where we got lucky. So when we were getting all our numbers together, getting all of our hard bids, lumber was still at a pretty high price when we were getting all that together. And then as we came into 2022 and we got ready to start construction, we got lucky. There was a window where lumber had come down, and we pulled the trigger on buying the entire lumber package in one. And we actually ended up saving. So we got the reverse of what many people were dealing with. We ended up saving about $310,000 from what the original budget was. So a lot of that's luck. But, I think the key there is when you're doing ground up, which is more risky, you have to have somebody on your team or have your own knowledge, because that really is going to be able to reduce or mitigate the risk that you might expose yourself to.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, and I know you mentioned luck a few times, but again, you're helping to mitigate kind of what's out of your control by being, building in those margins, right? Like building kind of those safety nets into your pro forma, being conservative. I know that's something that we have to take into account. I mean, especially when you're dealing with other people's capital too, right? Like that's always the highest priority, right? Preservation of capital. But I mean, that's great. And you're also too, like, this is also a benefit, I think, of kind of these larger projects, right? Like, I mean, not people are willing to take on an 84 unit, like new construction development, but the same thing would apply to like anything that's like multiple units, right? Or if you're doing like heavy volume, let's say as a flipper, or, even on our side, like when we do multifamily, like there's economies of scale, right? You get a discount, like you're able to lock in that massive, multiple 6-figure discount on lumber because you needed it, right? You need a bunch of lumber, right? It wouldn't benefit you so much if you're like, all right, well, you know what, we're gonna tackle this duplex or this single family. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, you maybe you save on the lumber costs in that moment just for that one project, but you're doing an entire development. So now that's going to benefit the entire across the board, right? That impacts your total development costs, your total project costs. Like, I got to imagine significantly. I'm sure you guys are probably like, yes, like this is awesome. Like,
yeah, exactly. You hit it spot on. One of the things I think you hit spot on there is the difference between doing a single family or doing even a duplex versus a larger multifamily project is you have scale. So you have economy of scale, and it can create a lot of benefit across the board. Another thing that was working in our favor was, the word recession. Recession was coming. And so when all the planning was happening, you couldn't get a sub on site, right? It was like crazy. Everything's booming. Well, interest rates start getting hiked up, and a lot of the for sale builders just put a halt on all their subdivisions. So that worked, again, magically in our favor, because now we have this large project that's about to start, and we have subs who, for the first time in probably 2-3 years, are actually now wanting to have some sort of anchor project because they can see what's coming into the future. So we were able to really leverage that as well to be able to get some really strong pricing and be able to have, a project that, as of today, 4 of the 6 buildings are framed up. We're going to go in. The first building is going to go into drywall at the end of this month. We're hitting our budget and our timelines really, really well, and, feel very, very blessed. We're, of course, right at this point now where it's critical to keep the foot on the gas and really make sure we can hit it. Mm-hmm. But it's looking like we will be able to hit both our budget and our timeline, which for me on my first large project is a big, big blessing.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I mean, and you're right too, right? Like I know we've seen that here locally, right? And I'm based in Hawaii, but I mean, we've seen it across the board in the different markets that we're in. It's just been hard to get, contractors and whatnot out. I mean, there's so much money in the system, right? Every Tom, Dick, and Harry is trying to get, work done in their house. They want to make improvements and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, well now, because you mentioned it, right? Like, well, recession. And then a lot of people are fearful, and and I get it, right? Nobody has a crystal ball, but, if you go look at the macro picture, everybody's kind of, okay, well, we've been in a recession, it's going to extend, whatever. So it's like, yeah, if the people that want to work, there's opportunity out there for you. And, you can likely actually get people on site to, to work in your project. So yeah, that's huge. You mentioned, I wanted to touch on, like the financing side. How have you seen that like impacting your project? Obviously we've got rates ticking up, now. How is that factored into? Is any of that factored into what you guys have going on in your development?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most challenging parts about the ground up side of things, because typically how developers or builders will approach it is they'll have, some sort of construction period, 12, 16, 18-month construction loan, and then they won't go to permanent financing until they have, 90 days trailing on their absorption. What we elected to do, because we have a good partnership with a small local bank, I think one of the keys when you're doing it is if you can get a partnership with a small local bank that is invested in the community, understands what you're trying to do, and can work with you on different tactics right now or creative structures, that's going to set you apart. So what we actually elected to do, because we saw what was happening with the interest rates, is we locked in the entire 11.5-year loan. So 10-year, we locked in the entire loan in one, so that we didn't have to, have a guessing game of what is this interest rate going to be at when we're done with construction. So we were able to lock that in at 5.35%, which is a high interest rate. It's still a high interest rate, but we had underwritten the deal at 6%. So it's also, how good is your pro forma, and, how conservative are you being? Because I think where, Steve, opportunity for groups like us are going to come in the near future is going to be the guys that were doing the development, didn't run their numbers properly, didn't think that their cost of capital was going to be what it is today. And there's going to be some stuff that's for sale for sure. Brand new, pretty nice stuff that, that's going to be for sale, because they just didn't run that capital. And so we made that decision, right, for security. And we were able, because it was a small bank, we were able to lock that in over the entire period. So, that's how we mitigated that risk when we're going into an environment of a lot of uncertainty.
No, that's awesome. And again, that speaks back to, kind of what we talked on earlier, right? Like, this is the power of the relationship, because again, you had to have relationships to get the deal flow to start, right? Like, oh, okay, great. Hey, I need those contacts for, our lots. Having the relationships, let's say, with the vendors, right? I'm sure that carried some weight, that you guys were already reputable, or you already had some established relationships with them. And then something key, and we've experienced this too, is working with those community lenders. Again, they need the business too, right? They're the market is completely slowed down. How many projects have stopped or just not even starting because the capital is just too expensive now. The debt's just too expensive. And so it's like, hey, these banks still need to get money moving. Like, they're still, in business to not just to stay afloat, but to keep, the economy moving. So, they have somebody like you. Hey, I'm still moving forward with this project. I've got a great deal on this. You put together the, business plan, you got the experience, and you got the relationship with them. Perfect. Right. Like, now you guys can, work together, make something awesome happen. That's a great, man. That's a great setup. 11 years locked in at that. We don't know where rates are going to go. We're seeing higher on our side for sure, on debt. So kudos to you, man. That's great. Especially if you're underwriting at 6.
Yeah, exactly. But we also, so you have to think about that happened as the rate climb started to come. We locked that in. I'd have to look at the paperwork, but we locked that in, essentially right when we closed the loan. That's the decision we were making. We have another project where we don't have the 24 unit. We're actually not locked in. So we're taking a little bit of a different gamble on that one, and we'll see what shakes out. We underwrote that at 8%. So, it's again, we're trying to be conservative. And we know that what happens there, right, is, okay, if we underwrite at a 6% or an 8% and we're okay with it, even though our cash flow is constricted, we know our cash flow is constricted, we're okay with it, because we're also in the game of the new construction is there because we're in the game of building and holding. And when you do new construction, think about the lifetime of your building, right? It's extended much longer. And so we can, let's say our cash flow is constrained a little bit initially. We'll be able to work through that. And when rates come down, because I do believe they will come down, I don't know how much. I don't know if they're going to come down at what we got to see over the last couple of years, but they will come down. Then We'll just refinance.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I've talked to a number of, we're a part of the same mastermind. So it's like talking to, a lot of the same, other people in the space that necessarily weren't prepared for it. It's like, well, look, you can weather the storm, especially with multifamily, right? It's like, it's such a need, right? There's so many people that got priced out of the market that will, unfortunately, they'll never be able to buy, especially with the current prices. And now, like, the interest rates, even if pricing is softened a little bit, like they just can't afford it. So, I mean, we've created there's been a generation of like forever renters that's been created. And so it's like, well, there's a demand and a need for, rental housing, and you're providing, brand new construction. So it's like, well, look, man, this is the best that you'll find in terms of product, like being brand new. So, I mean, that's something, that we're able to, provide and bring to the market. So, yeah, no, that's huge.
Definitely what you said there, right? We've definitely taken the stance that the U.S. will become a renter's nation. We're not the only one. I think you can watch Smart Money and you can really see that as it's one, the cost of things is one factor, but also just the way that people are choosing to live their lives now, right? If you look at baby boomers, they maybe want to, they want to sell their house, get out of the maintenance side of it, capture that equity that they've built, and now they move into an apartment. You look at millennials, Gen Zs, they're not as attached to the idea of having to own a home. That American dream has shifted a little bit. And so I do think we'll have a renter's nation. And one of the things that then, I hedged against on the other side is I also think that entry-level housing is still going to be there's going to be a demand for that. There will still be a group of people who want that, but it's really got to be entry level. So that like mid, what I'm not focused on at all is like that mid, like 500, 600, $700,000 range. I'm like, hey, I'll do a simple 3-bedroom, 2-bath that if I had to, I could turn into a rental. If I want the liquidity, I'll sell it. So I think that there's still a combination there. But when you look at like doing a single family rental versus even a 4-plex or a multifamily unit, the biggest problem is in my single family, if my renter moves out, that's 0% occupancy. In a multifamily, you know, a couple people move out, we can still pay our mortgage. And so that's why I think people should really, especially as they're growing in their real estate career and their investments, they should really start focusing in on that multifamily, because it's just, you know, it really reduces your risk. And it's a great way to get rich slow.
No, absolutely. I mean, I fully agree. I mean, that's kind of our MO, and I can't tell you how many times, you know, I've kind of preached that. You know, you and I are obviously in contact with a lot of different, let's say, flippers or people that don't ever really hold stuff for themselves. And, you know, I know I've talked to a lot through, like I said, the mastermind that we're a part of. And it's like, yeah, I'd rather make the quick money. Yeah, sure, you can make awesome money, you know, doing flips and, you know, doing a lot of volume. But at some point, like, you need to start building for yourself, you know, and like you said, like in a period like this, like we still have income coming in because of the multifamily projects, right? Like it's not really a concern, right? And you're able to build like generational wealth, right? Which sounds like you're, you know, tuned into now that you're, you know, you're having your, you know, your child. It's like, man, that is paradigm shifting, you know, it's like, that's a game changer.
Yeah,
and so, yeah, you know, you got to think a little different, but no, I absolutely agree. It's a total, you know, real estate in general, and especially commercial, you know, it's such a hedge against, you know, inflation. I mean, it's a risk off asset, you know, for the most part, especially for the stuff that, you know, you and I are both involved in. You know, it's a flight to safety. It really is, especially during times like this, because you still have so many tenants that are, you know, again, everybody's paying, you know, helping to pay that mortgage, right? And, you know, you called it there. If you've got one single family, man, you're stuck holding that bag, you know, if they lose their job or whatever, right? Like so much stuff has happened the last couple of years now. So yeah, no, that's, you're preaching to the choir, but I know our listeners need to hear that, right? They need to hear, like, hey, you get involved, right? Get involved on, you know, something that's solid, you know, so you don't have so much exposure to the volatility of the market. So no, that's huge. Well, and like that too, like I said, we kind of briefly touched on it. Like nobody's got a crystal ball. But I'm sure you're tracking like the economy just as closely as we would be. You know, what do you see? Like, do you see anything on the horizon? Do you see us turning around like anytime soon, or like what are you guys projecting internally, like timeline wise? You know, is this year going to be a good year? We're recording in 2023 now. I gotta always remember to write that down correctly.
Yeah, 2023. Is it going to be a good year? So a couple things I'll touch on there. I mean, if we started with just the Fed and the interest rates, right? The Fed has done everything that they have said, right? So they have followed through each time. They've warned everybody. So you could literally pay attention. It's not like they're not going against what they're saying. So they're saying, hey, we're going to raise rates again here. And they followed through. Each one they followed through on. So I actually do believe that they will continue to raise rates until they can see inflation ease. We're seeing it ease a little bit. But, you know, I do think that we're going to see a couple more hikes in Q1 as, you know, as we progress into Q1. And then I think one of the things that the big unknown I have right now is what happens with unemployment, because you look at all the pressure that's happening across all the companies and all the layoffs that are coming. I think there's going to be a lag effect. And I think what makes me the most nervous is if that unemployment spikes, even if we raise these rates and we get inflation under control, if that unemployment spikes, which I think the probabilities are there, I don't know for sure, but I think the probabilities are there, we're going to be in for a little bit more pain. The flip side of that is when there's blood on the street, there's money to be made. And so I think that the economy isn't going to magically get better. I think it's going to get worse before it does. But I think that right now is time to watch your expenses, get liquid, and get ready to pull the trigger on some potentially once in a lifetime opportunities.
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And it's been that way too, right? Like there was, again, you had that little initial dip when there's so much fear going on when COVID started, right? And it's like, well, you got people running away. It's like, yeah, but if you're ready and you're available and willing to kind of move forward into that, again, it was great. COVID was great for us, and the same, sure. and the same thing now too, right? If you've got dry powder, or you're able to reposition and kind of sell off, create some liquidity for yourself, or you're maintaining it. I fully agree with you. I think that there's going to be amazing deals continuing to be happen. I mean, real estate's hyper local, of course, and all of that, even like the jobs and all that kind of stuff. But looking at the macro. There is pain that's going to be there kind of regardless. Right. And that has a trickle down effect, unfortunately. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. That's obviously something we're keeping close tabs on, as individual and group investors, to be able to provide the best product and, negotiate too. Right. Cause again, some people buy into it. They want to cash out, but then that leaves an opportunity for, investors that are prepared really, to be able to go in and lock in those opportunities. So yeah, no, I fully agree there.
I think a key on that being prepared is a little bit of patience because, our expectation is, hey, this should it should happen already, but there's a lag effect sometimes and we don't know what triggers, and so you just have to be a little bit more patient than maybe you would even want to. That's what's hard for me because I'm like, let's go make a deal. Let's go. We got to still do stuff, let's go. Yeah. And so I'm trying to really, as a young, aggressive entrepreneur, I'm trying to really put myself in to the future and think bigger than just, I got to get every single deal that's right in front of me. We got to be patient, and that's where talking to guys that have more experience that've been through some cycles, what's so cool these days is there's so many ways to network. There's so many ways to get information. You can listen to these really, really smart guys who've been around for a long, long time. They're all putting out free information. So you can tap into their experience and then really try to put it into play today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. I'm trying to think of, what was available, when subprime fell out, when I was first starting in the business and getting squeezed, during that time. It's like, man, like that's still so early on in terms of, like the internet and like podcasts and like recordings and all that kind of stuff. But now like the amount of like free content that's out there, right? Like books and, audiobooks and like, how many sharp people that are on, YouTube or like this, who are recording a podcast. And again, people can just gain from our experience, so that they don't have to go through the same pain. But it's like, man, there's so much education out there available now. You just got to be willing to, put the time, turn off the TV, stop listening to the junk and the bad news, and then okay, how can I put myself in a position to come out on the other side of this like better than ever, right? Like that's kind of the main thing. So yeah, that's awesome.
The only thing I'd add to that is, sorry to interrupt, but
no,
educate yourself, but also create action. You don't want to educate yourself to death and never take action, right? Because one of the best ways to learn is to get in, take action, and just do. So, sure, there's so much information, but I find some people who are trying to get started, they listen to everything. They don't know where to go, and then they just get paralysis by analysis. Action is everything when you're really trying to get going.
No, fully agree with that. And you're spot on. You are spot on with that. So yeah, great advice. Well, we're going to go ahead and transition into the fire round portion of our show. Or is that something you're game for?
Let's do it.
All right, right on. All right, Dirk. So what is the best, talking about education, right? What is the best book that you recommend other than Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Yeah, I know everybody loves that book. It's such a good book. No, one of the best ones, I think I would recommend that people read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It is a phenomenal book. Anything you can read by Napoleon Hill is great. That guy was far ahead of his time. And I would start there. Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill.
Yep. No, definitely a great read. Yeah, both of those books. Yeah, and I agree. Napoleon Hill stuff's great. A classic. What would you consider? What's your superpower?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I would say emotional intelligence, being able to read people and situations very quickly. Emotional intelligence would be my superpower.
No, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely necessary. Especially working with people, it's unavoidable, especially when you get kind of bigger projects and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's vital, right? So having that as a superpower, huge. And that's probably why you've gotten some of these great deals too, to be honest with you.
And my infrastructure, right? I'm not a self-made guy. I'm very, very blessed to have the support I have.
Yeah. All right. On. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned over your career so far, in real estate?
I think a big one is that discipline equals your destiny. So you need to really audit all of your behaviors, all of your habits. And if you don't like where you are today, really get in there, audit yourself, be brutally honest, and change those things, become very disciplined, because that will equal your destiny. So the more disciplined I became, the more success I saw. And I think that if I learned that at an earlier age, when I was all over the place, that would have helped me fast track.
No, that's huge, man. That is a great one. It's a great saying that could, throw that on a t-shirt or, something, man. That's huge. And I think you're absolutely correct, right? It's especially when we're talking about real estate, right? There's 1,000,001 different ways to make money in the business. But if you try to chase after each and every one of them, like, you're really not going to get too far, right? Like, or once you identify what you're good at and what you're, the way that the route you want to go, like, go in. Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's right.
Stuff.
Yeah. Be disciplined for sure.
Yeah, very good. And then, for the busy working professional working towards, financial freedom, what advice would you have for them?
I would say, one, get clear. So get extremely clear on why you want the financial freedom. Then get clear on your strategy, what strategy you think is going to get you there. And then you got to take action. You got to align that dream with action, daily action. One thing that Alex Hormozy said that I really love, like a lot of people, it would let's say they want something, it would maybe take them 20 hours of hard work, or let's say a year of hard work. Well, nobody ever starts in that first hour. All it takes is starting in that first hour. And so that's that action taking. That really resonated with me. You have to really just get going. So get clear on why you want it, get clear on what strategy you're going to do, and then just get started. Take action, because otherwise you can push it into the future forever. You got to pull the trigger. No,
I love it, man. That's awesome, dude. Yeah, that's great. Great stuff. Alex is, I don't know if you saw him at the mastermind, but, even just reading and listening to some of the stuff.
I just joined. But again, like that goes back to, like, think about all this. I was talking to my wife the other day, and I was like, yeah, one of my mentors. And I started talking about Russ, this guy I really like, this artist I really like. And I'm like, I just said that he's one of my mentors. I've never met the guy. He doesn't know who I am, but now, because of the information, the social media, all of it, you can now see what these really successful people are doing. And I was like, caught myself like, I just called him my mentor. He doesn't even know who the hell I
am. And that's okay, right? Like, that's it. It doesn't matter. Like, they are your mentor because, through their recordings, through their work, right, through the books and all that kind of stuff, you are gleaning from them. So they in fact are your mentor. So I agree with you there, man. That's great. Well, awesome. Well, if our audience wants to get, in touch with you, if they got questions for you, they want to learn a little bit more about, what you've got going on, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, a couple different ways. You can email me, Dirk at Momentasize, which is MOMENTASIZE, Dirk at Momentasize.com. We also just started getting on our social side of things. So if you want to follow me along there, you can follow me at Dirk American Dream. I'm on Instagram. I'm going to start being on YouTube and TikTok as well, but I would start there on Instagram. DM me, get a hold of me. I love talking about real estate, and it's a big obsession. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can tell, man. Right on. Well, Dirk, hey, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I really appreciate you hopping on with me today. And I know our audience got some great gems from you there. So I'd love to have you on in the future. Check in on your project, see what else you might have going on.
Thanks, Steve. I look forward to meeting you in Vegas. You going to be in Vegas?
I will be.
Yeah, I get to meet you in person. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great one. Aloha. What an awesome show with Dirk. He's got a wealth of insight. We were talking a little bit more even off recording, but yeah, he's got some great gems for their way to dive in too. He's taken the knowledge that he knew, leverage the relationships that he had built, and is now working on, some amazing things, creating opportunities for others too, like through syndication and whatnot. So, great show with Dirk. Go back and listen to it for sure. For some more insight, if you didn't grab everything the first time around. But yeah, just and again, if you found, if you're interested in learning more about what we're doing, go visit tricityequity.com, of course. If you want to connect with like-minded investors, join our Facebook group, Honolulu Multifamily, and more. And of course, if you found value in today's podcast, please go leave a review for us. We'd love to kind of boost up that review. That definitely helps us out. Go leave us a 5-star review wherever you heard it. Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, all that good stuff. And then, of course, share the episode with somebody else. Also want to make sure that we're sharing that we do have our second annual conference coming up, the Hawaii Millionaire Mindset Conference. That's going to be over on the beautiful island of Hawaii, right? It's the big island of Hawaii. That's happening June 29th through July 1st at the Monolani Resort. So, of course, make sure that you're checking us out there. We'll make plans to be there during the summertime. That's an awesome summer vacation for you. But yeah, we'd love to see you out there. All right, that's it for today for you guys. We'll see you next time. Aloha.